Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video I'm going to be doing another tier list. This is going to be for strong trait characters. I have done one for alert, I have done one for fast. If you want to check out a playlist for my tier lists, you can see them in the top right hand corner. I'll be adding each one to that. You can just easily check that playlist just to see, the new ones that come out. This is strong. Next up, we're going to have tough. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to come out, sometime early next week. But we're going to go through the strong characters, and we're going to start off with the silver characters. Kelly, I think, was a really good character when it was originally released. I think he was almost up, maybe even in the S tier, just based on his offensive capability and the fact that you could use him on defense as well. He's a really good support character. He has dropped down slowly, progressively, as things have gone on. I'd say he's still pretty decent if you're starting out in the game. Very good. But now we have the progression missions where you can get your hands on Maggie. Maggie can pretty much do the same job that Kelly can do to a certain extent. Next up we have Dante, kind of the same deal. He was actually a very good character. I used Kelly and Dante through a lot of conquest in the early days. He's going to be quite high up. I'd say B tier. He's not really part of any important part of the game at the moment. But he's a good fallback character, especially if you're new to the game. He's actually pretty decent. And of course, being silver, even if you invest in that character, as long as you don't invest in the military supplies side of things, you can always use that character as fodder for a future gold mythic. It's as simple as that. Now, Connie, she is actually okay too. I would say she's probably never really been much higher than B tier. I would say she's only ever been used for me in one stage of conquest, where she was actually really, really powerful, but her kit was really interesting. There is another gold mythic which his kit has actually been based off of it, which is Nick, who we'll get onto further on in the video, who I think obviously is a better version of her. But Connie is pretty decent just as what she can do. I think Strong probably did have the best silver mythics when the mythic era started, so that's actually pretty cool. Now we've got Wayland. Wayland, I think, was once upon a time a really, really high tier character. He's still very usable. Disarm is very important. I'm going to put him in the A tier for now. Still a good character. A couple of his passives still very interesting in terms of using him. He gets better chance to proc weapons, so it can be good with a stun on attack weapon, that sort of thing. Next up we have Sophia, and I think Sophia has never really been that great. She's not terrible. She's kind of interesting. She probably can have some niche team capability. She had an interesting LB3 upgrade, but it just wasn't enough. I think her signature was just too slow. She doesn't do things fast enough. She's pretty brutal when you come up against her on those boosted challenge run stages and stuff, but otherwise not so much. Next up we have Negan, another character, probably was S tier once upon a time. I'd say he's still a pretty decent leader. Unfortunately, the focus side of his leader skill has kind of been countered. There's a lot of characters that will remove the focus, and there's also characters now that punish you for actually even getting focus in the first place. Characters like Rosie, so not great at all. Next up we have Mercer, and I say Mercer is high B tier, low A tier. I will put him in the B tier though, because I don't see him as a primary character. He was actually one of the harder to come by characters early on in the game. I think he was in training grounds and he was in the supply depot, but for the first couple of months he was one of the decent characters. The reflect capability of him to reflect rushes, to reflect everything on that passive was actually pretty interesting, kind of like a surprise thing. Not so much of a problem these days with the likes of Connie and those characters, but again, if you've come up against him in challenge run, yeah, problematic. Dexter never really been used. Again, he was a very hard to come by character early on in the mythic era. I think you got one of him from the museum. A lot of people wouldn't have got two of him, and by the time they did, it was kind of a miss. I do think his kit is actually quite interesting though, and I think a couple of other kits has been based off of him. I think he has a better chance to nuke tanks. That's pretty much, maybe even just slightly better chance of leaders as well, but I think it's mainly tanks. So yeah, next up we have Darius, and Darius is high D tier. There has to be a D tier character. It's going to be Darius. And yeah, he's not too great. He's not too great. I think early on in the Mythic era, he was quite tanky, and he did have some potential, but the limit breaks didn't really go his way, and it didn't pan out for him. And the same can be said for the next character. I had high hopes for this character. I think a lot of people did, because his art is probably still top 5. It's easily one of the best looking characters. Beta, one of the most loved characters in the RTS. Maybe not loved, he's a bad guy, but you know what I mean. A lot of people like this character, but he's not good. He's not good at all. Limit breaks did not go his way as well. He didn't get a first turn signature move. He got boost to like heal reduction and stuff on his rush. He definitely needed like damage amplification, and he needed speed ups. He had 55 AP cost rush, but his signature move was just too slow, and he was more of a defense team character with a turn 2 signature move, so it was obviously problematic there. Early on, grade 5, it looked like there was potential for him, but obviously it fell off drastically as the limit breaks came out. Next up, we have Aaron, and I'd say this character is kind of interesting. I'd put him in A tier. I think he's a pretty solid investment if you get this character. He is reasonably hard to come by. I think you get him through prestige, but if you're a new player, you're not going to get to that prestige too quickly. Veterans got him almost like day 1, I think. But the second Aaron, I can't really remember how hard it was to come by him initially, but he's actually a pretty decent character. He can get you through quite a lot of, the game modes. He can be used on defense. I have seen some teams where he's pretty useful on defense. If there's a character that comes out that somehow boosts greens, strong characters like Andre does to like tough, I think Aaron actually could get a little bit of a run of things. He's got revives and heals, and he has pretty decent damage boosts as well. He hasn't got the best specialist skill. Hold the line is kind of like but it is interesting. He's got an okay-ish kit. I don't think he's a terrible character by any stretch. Next up we have Conor. He's going to go into A tier as well. I think he's still usable, but his balance on his stats is kind of messed up. People primarily did use this guy on defense, and he has very offensive stats, but he has a turn 1 signature move that taunts a line. Actually very, very powerful, but he can be hard nuked. He has to be teamed up in the right team. I think potentially if you team him up with Nor, giving him full bonus HP on turn 1 actually could be good. I haven't actually seen anyone do anything like that, because it'll give him a lot of survivability. Even when he's attacked in that situation, taking off bonus HP, he should heal it back up because he's got a passive that does that. I actually have to check that out myself. Next up is Bruce, and I'm going to put Bruce down into C tier. He has actually got a good kit, but it's not really that interesting anywhere. Faction Assault, when it comes out, this guy could potentially get boosted up to high B, maybe even low A tier, because he's got a kit that is primarily built for Faction Assault. Like, is really good Faction Assault kit. He'll get stronger and stronger and stronger as the fight goes on, and it will buff the amount of bleed damage he'll do on his rush. Eventually it'll be good, but on raids and war and stuff like that, that's not really that good, and there are just better characters to do bleed and stuff early on in the fight in things like Conquest and stuff, so I don't think he's that great. Next up we've got Michonne. Michonne's a solid A tier character. She's good in road map, she's good in war. Even still, I think she's got some potential against some war defenses. There aren't too many good fast defense teams right now, so she's kind of like sitting on the bench. But if fast characters do make a comeback, you're going to see Michonne be very useful to anyone who has got Michonne and invested in her previously. So definitely a good character there. Morgan is a weird one. Again, not a character that a lot of people have got their hands on. I'm going to put him in straight into A tier. Don't see too many LB3 Morgans. I would have to LB3 like a random character from the Survivors to get mine LB3. Unfortunately, the 6th anniversary Rosita does not count towards the Mythic trial for the museum. If it did, I would 100% max her, and then I get my LB3 Morgan, but that's not going to be the case. And next out we have Harper. Now Harper I actually think is a good leader. I don't think she's really been like a top tier leader, but she's kind of niche against certain teams, especially ones that have a lot of effects. Is pretty good if they do effects against you or give themselves buffs. She cleanses the enemies and cleanses her teammates, so it's actually kind of good. She's got some defense down on her kit as well, I believe. She hits pretty hard. Obviously she's a leader, so if she hits, she's going to have a lot of 1535s. Should do pretty reasonable damage. Now we've got Michonne 2K. I'm still going to put this character in A tier, but I'd say she's like low S tier because she is going to bring a lot to the table. She's got a rampage weapon on greens. Really useful character. Guardian Shield kind of weird for a damage dealer, but it works extremely well. Really nice kit. I think when this character came out, there's a lot of hype. Obviously, she kind of looks crazy, but her kit is really interesting. Rampage, multi-hit, Guardian Shield, stun on the Sig move turn 1. A lot going for her. She would definitely be in S tier, again, if there was more fast defense teams. I think once that comes around and more fast defense team characters come around, you're going to see a couple of these greens just get popped up into S tier just in terms of how useful they are. But they're definitely not a bad investment just because they're so solid on their characters. Barker I am going to put into A tier, but I'd say he's low A tier just based on the fact that the synergy with Barker and teammates doesn't ever seem to really pan out. He seems to be missing something on the Barker defense team. I have seen some decent ones though, to be fair. We're getting more medics that can potentially work there. I don't think we've got like a decent strong medic. I could be wrong. And that's what he needed. Also, he gives buffs to RTS characters, and a lot of the RTS characters that, you know, could be used on defense that seem to be decent aren't actually the right trait. It's kind of a weird situation there. It was like pretty much just like Mirabelle and like one other character. I can't really remember who. So yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment when it came to that passive he had. But yeah, next up is Mike, and I'm gonna put Mike in S tier. I think he was like S plus once upon a time, but he's just a solid S tier character now. I think he's usable in pretty much every game mode. Backbone of a lot of people's attack teams. If you're brand new and you can get this character, or you've got this character, even at grade 5, he will help you all through the game. He'll help you all through the game. World map, road maps, conquest, challenge run, everything. He's such a solid character as a support character. He does need good characters around him, although I did show a little video where he can potentially in the right situation be very effective by himself, but that sort of situation is going to pop up very rarely. So he needs good characters around him, but he's a really solid support character. He's like the advanced version of Kelly, and that's why he's in S tier. Next up we have Valkyrie, and I think Valkyrie never really got a good run of things. I'm going to put her into B tier. I would say it's not necessarily worth putting the investment into her, especially when you look at some of the A tier damage dealers like Michonne and Michonne 2K. Valkyrie just falls short of these characters, so she can't realistically be in A tier if these characters are in A tier. But she has an interesting kit. She does bonus damage against people with bonus HP, I think, which is pretty interesting right now, but I just don't think it's enough. And a lot of those characters are alert characters right now, and she's strong, so she's going to get obliterated. Next up is Rick. This isn't actually an interesting one. I'm actually going to put him in B tier because I've rarely used this guy except in very limited situations like Conquest in certain Conquest teams, and like maybe Arena to win turn 1. That's pretty much it. Like, Command doesn't seem to be as big a deal in the Mythic era as it did in previous eras. And my theory behind this is because signature moves never existed before. The active skills were never as like good when it comes to damage, and they also didn't give you AP gain. So commands were really important, but now they're just not. So that's kind of weird, but you know, it's interesting. He can have usage on defense. It does require a lot to get Rick 2000 because of the old sort of Mythic trial system where you have to max out a bunch of characters to get this guy. So it is a very heavy investment to get him. So only unless you have a really good idea and you know it works is it actually kind of worth it, in my opinion. Next up we have Marcus, and Marcus I'd say is like low A tier. He has actually a pretty good kit. Stun resistance to all teammates off of turn 1. Really nice. Is it like pre-fight bonuses are like kind of rare, so it is also always nice to have. But I think he had his day, and I don't think it's that day anymore. It was pretty much at Christmas. It was very hard to deal with Marcus. He has got like a stun on defense on his passive, so you could give him a weapon that has no window and get some bonuses somehow. I'm sure there's people out there who have thought of good Marcus defense teams. He's not a terrible character by any means. That's why he's in A tier, but you know, he's not like tippity top anymore. We do have William, and even William still is pretty a good character. Put him in S tier. He countered the likes of Zachary when he first came out, and he's a very good attack character, even though he's a support character. Gives bonus HP, survivability, but also on defense. He can be used on defense with the same build. I've used him for quite a long time on a couple of teams, and he gives AP on defense teams, really fast rushing on defense teams. It's actually pretty problematic, honestly. Full cleanse on the rush, very powerful character for sure. And I don't think many people have like their full 3 defenses without using William, just because he's so useful against the likes of like anti-burn bleed, but also the rest of his kit is useful in itself. Next up we have Romanov, and he was a character that was given out for War of Champions. No, actually it was a War Season character, sorry. There was a War of Champions like skin of him, and I only use this guy in very, you know, unique situations. A lot of the time it's like Tank Arena or something like that. If he's like in my 3rd or 4th run through, or maybe like in, let's say, Survival Road. He's actually pretty nice in Survival Road. He kind of misses a little bit, just because he is a tank and he's not that tanky. You can actually obliterate this character. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Aaron where if there is a character that comes out that boosts strong characters somehow, he might get a little boost. Guardian Shield is nice. He has a taunt as well. He has a thing where, like, if he gets attacked, he heals adjacent teammates, which you could potentially pair with someone like with Overheal 2, and because he gets a taunt on his signature move, that actually could work really well. But as it stands, not so much. Now we'll go for Deyou now, and I think he was a miss when he first came out. It was kind of like they wanted to bring out a character that would be like, I think it was going to be like Michonne 2K and Princess kind of leader to make them rampages actually happen more often. It didn't seem to work. Now I did see this character use quite a bit of War of Champions by certain factions, some of the top factions in fact, because he has got a passive which has a full control. Basically, I think it stuns, impairs, and dazes someone for 2 turns on turn 1 before the fight starts. So I saw some people using that just to kind of cheese, to slow down your attacks. And if they slow down your attacks, your scoring is going to be slower, and they're going to outscore you, and so on and so forth. So it is kind of interesting, that sort of thing, but it's very niche. I wouldn't say it's necessarily for everybody, but that's the only, you know, usability. So I'd say it's kind of high B, low A. Next up, we do have Deyou, and she was a Battle Pass character. She is actually pretty interesting. I'm going to put her into A tier, but I think she's quite low A tier. She can be in good teams, I think, where she, you know, you take down another character, she has a chance to revive a teammate that's already been downed. Kind of interesting. She's got a stun on defense weapon. She's like, I think she's actually pretty reasonable, but she is kind of missing something. I'm not really sure what it is. Again, like it's just basically stronger defense team characters, just missing a little bit. Survivability, pretty much a lot of it, a lot of the time. Just the ability to nuke these characters is quite high. Maybe on panned defense teams with Nor, not so much, but you know, Deyou I don't think is a terrible character by any stretch. Next up, we've got Titan. I think Titan once upon a time was definitely like up at S+, without a doubt. He has dropped down a little bit. I'm going to put him in S just because there are other strong damage dealers out there right now. And honestly, I don't use this guy for damage as much as I used to. I mainly use him for support. The fact that he has a turn 1 normalize, it refreshes quite quickly. Also, you know, I do obviously rush with this guy. He has got a very hard-hitting rush. He's good at like anti-Vance. If you control Vance and just nuke him, Vance is out of the game. It's pretty good. But I think as a damage dealer, he isn't the most powerful in the game anymore. There was a time when he was easily the most powerful damage dealer at LB3. One of the War of Champions, he was like a must character. So yeah, definitely still up there, but I think more towards the support side of things, not necessarily just the damages as it was once upon a time. Next up, we're going to have Ghost. I'd say Ghost, again, kind of like, he will be low S tier here, just because, just like Michonne and Michonne 2K, he primarily is going to be good against fast characters. I think these bonus HP teams are very problematic for this character and other strong damage dealers, honestly. And I don't think they're going to work against these teams. I don't think they're necessarily like that fantastic against these prayer teams, so they haven't really got a place at the moment, all these strong damage dealers, but they are very powerful. Like, they're very ready for when the fast teams come out. Like I say, if there's going to be a fast defense team, we've gone through more strong teams, because there was some strong defense teams with like Marcus and William and the likes at Christmas. Then we had the tough teams. Now we're into these alert teams. Will fast have its day? Well, just have your strong characters ready for when that happens. Next up is Nick, and I'll put Nick into A tier. And the reason I put Nick into A tier is because he is better than Connie and is basically the better version of her. But I think he's just kind of getting outmatched. The thing about Nick, though, is that he isn't trait specific. As much as he is a strong character, it isn't like he's doing specifically damage against fast characters, because he doesn't do trait damage. He's doing main damage. It can rack up really quickly. But I think he's going to be a little bit too slow for the likes of War. Raids is going to be useful, and basically every other game mode. But War maybe a bit too slow, but it could be good for people who are like punching up. He's one of the best characters to come up against teams that are much stronger than you, because he can do damage regardless of their defensive stats, because he does main, and not many people use main resist. He can potentially do like, you know, 100,000 main damage on that rush. Once he gets a couple of procs on his specialist skill where it gets bonus attack, if you have like an attack weapon or attack buff, they do stack together, because They're different sources, and he can get massive attack boosts because of that. Next up is going to be Ronaldo. Now, Ronaldo actually is an interesting character. I'm going to put him as a solid A tier character here. He came out as a war rewards, and when he first came out, I was kind of like, I mean, maybe, you know, when you see a war character, you have to kind of guess what they're going to be like in 3 months, 4 months, because that's how long it takes to get them. At the time, it was just kind of like, okay, but when he did actually come into the game and you did get him, he was actually pretty reasonable. I've seen him used even on some defense teams, and it's kind of interesting. He needs to have, you know, certain amounts of bonus HP. His survivability is not great because I think he has extremely low defense, so he can get kind of like smashed really quickly. But he has Taunt on his kit quite heavily, so if you don't deal with him early, he can be problematic for sure. Next, we have Sophia, and I think she's a pretty solid character as a leader. She has been used a bit against me. I've seen her a couple of times, but I don't think strong characters have the best defensive options right now. They need someone to kind of support them. I think, you know, Alert has the massive bonus HP. Tough has the big defense because of the leader. Strong don't have much. You know, you have to kind of fit them in, getting the bonuses off of other, you know, leaders and stuff like that. And so I think there needs to be that strong defense team character that comes out that kind of works with all these tunes that I'm saying would get buffed, you know, boosted up on defense if that character existed. Next up is the bear. It is Brutus, and he's going to get shifted all the way up to S tier, but I don't think like he's really there just yet. As much as his potential is S tier, I don't really think he's really usable again. Like, it's so, I'm just going to say this a lot about strong characters, just like he's having to be used against non-trait damage, but his output is immense. I've tested him out quite a bit. I did do a guide on this character just to see the kind of potential you could get, and the fact that his taunt does work on his passive as well as a bonus attack while taunted mod do stack together. The potential damage output of this character is nuts, and he does get bonus damage against bonus HP, so it all stacks in the right setup. It's going to be really good, but a lot of these characters with the bonus HP right now, like I say, are alert. They're going to focus Brutus. It could be problematic. Next up is the Scotsman, and the only reason Scotsman's going to be an A, he is a pretty low A tier character, is because of his combo with Brutus. If the Scotsman didn't have that combo with Brutus, he'd be like maybe like a solid to low B tier character, maybe even like a high C tier character. His kit isn't that amazing. He's a leader, he's okay. He has, you know, okay first turn control, but other than the stuff that he brings to the table with Brutus, the defense down on him is just okay-ish. He's not really doing too much otherwise, but the combo with Brutus is like next level, so that's amazing. The only downside is you're having to use 2 character slots to effectively get one character to be great, and the Scotsman doesn't really do much else, so it's very hard to build a team around them because, you know, you only have limited character slots. It's pretty much as simple as that. Next up, I'm going to be putting Rosie into S tier. This is going to require like very good combos. A lot of Rosies I've come up against have been low tier. Obviously, when she first came out, people only had a limited amount of ultra tokens, so there's a lot of people with only like grade 5. I think it's a bit easier to deal with the grade 5s. LB3s with the increased debilitating status effect resistance is problematic, and yeah, I've come up against a few LB3s. It is problematic indeed. If she as a defensive character has the survivability that these other strong characters don't because of that extra defense she gets off of her weapon, I think she gets an extra 50% defense from like improved Stonewall, I think it is. Now the final strong character that was released before August that I'm going to place is going to be Preach, and I'd say Preach is kind of like a low A tier character. I haven't really seen him being used to what I would say could potentially be his like high potential, which would be on a defense team in the right setup. I think he could primarily, you know, be decent on attack against these tough teams if you do require that, but realistically I just haven't seen where I think he's going to be ending up, which is on defense teams. I've seen like 1 or 2 ways okay-ish, and again I'm going to say the same thing again. Strong characters just need some support on defense teams, and they need something to hit on attack. I think strong is like the worst trait when it comes to how important it is for them to, you know, to be in the game. I think fast is the worst trait when it comes to actual like attack team characters, but when it comes to actual characters usability, it's definitely just the strong traded characters. You know, it doesn't give any bonus them being strong at the moment. But maybe some things will change in the future. This is my idea of the strong trait tier list. I haven't got anyone in S+ tier. I don't think anyone's of that level. But potentially, maybe a character could get pushed up. Maybe the likes of Ghost, maybe Brutus. If, you know, there is a fast defense team meta, these characters become much more important for sure. But as things stand, they're good. They're solid characters, but their usability is a little bit limited. Do tell me your thoughts on my tier list. Is there anything you would like to change? Let me know in the comments down below. That is the end of my video. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.